grab some quiche and some coffee and settle into breakfast at Blake. Well, good morning, everyone. My name is Woody Kingman, and I am honored to represent the Blake Alumni Board and the Office of Institutional Advancements, which sponsors these events known as Breakfast at Blake. Thank you all for attending this morning. It is yet another record crowd for January, which I think speaks highly of our speaker. I'm glad she made it. I was a little nervous she might get lost on her way here today, but just in case, we had a big sign down by the Amit parking lot that said Mortenson Deliveries. Before we hear from Kate, let me just tell you about the lineup we have for the rest of the year. In February, we will hear from Blake parent Jeffrey Jones. He was going to speak in April, but he's going to be a little busy then. He is now the new CEO of H&R Block. He was at Target, Gap, Coca-Cola, and Uber, so he will be very interesting to hear about being Chief Marketing Officer at some pretty interesting companies. And then in April, the founder and director of the Center for Native Peoples and the Environment, Dr. Robin Wall Kimmerer, will be here. She will be part of the Phil Otis Environmental Authors Program. She'll speak to us then. And then in May, we will honor our young alumna of the year. Erica Dolland, class of 1998, is the head of faculty at the Abu Dhabi Ministry of Education. So hope you will put those dates on your calendar. Well, today we have the pleasure of hearing from Blake parent and former trustee Kate Mortenson. Her son Jack graduated in 2015, daughter Nora in 2016, and son Charles is a junior at Blake this year. Kate grew up in North Andover, Massachusetts, attended Boston University where she met a Blake alum, Becky Gillette, and after college, I don't know if Becky was involved in this or not, but Kate moved to town with Hubbard Broadcasting, and then Becky introduced her college classmate to her high school classmate, David Mortenson, who convinced her to stay here in town, much to all of our gain, for sure. David graduated in the class of 1984, and he spoke at breakfast at Blake 4 years ago when there was a little hole in the ground that has since become the U.S. Bank Stadium. And these two are the first husband and wife team to speak separately. The Hegards spoke together a few years ago, so we're delighted to have Kate here to follow up and really show up the husband a little bit. I hope you all read about Kate's many accomplishments in the invitation to this breakfast. It's obvious that service is baked into her DNA, and there's a long list of organizations to which Kate has brought her engagement and strategic skills. And as one of her colleagues said in the nonprofit world about Kate, throughout her work in the Twin Cities, she always leads with class and distinction. Despite the demands of her work with her many boards, the charities, and now the Final Four local organizing committee, Kate somehow manages to find time for plenty of adventure and parenting fun, as evidenced this last August when she and David spontaneously grabbed Charlie, jumped in the car, drove 1,200 miles to Cheyenne, Wyoming to see a total eclipse of the sun. And so now, in the midst of the Super Bowl 52 excitement, I can't think of a better time to hear Kate's presentation, the Minneapolis Final Four and Building a Sports Economy to Benefit the Region. Please join me in a warm welcome for Kate Mortenson.
It's all yours. Thank you so much. Good morning, everybody. Well, this certainly feels like a home game. Looking around the room and seeing so many friends, so many peers, so many colleagues from activities here at Blake and in other parts of the community. It's great to be here this morning, and it is really fun that a couple of years ago I sat here and watched my husband present, which was terrific, and then kind of flash forward. I think at that time I had no idea what my projects would be in the future leading up to the project I'm working on now. But recently we did our logo unveil, and that was kind of a big deal moment that sort of cued the larger communities that something is coming. And it's based here in Minneapolis, and it's a chance to, tell the world something new about Minneapolis, something we want them to know about us. And you're trying to kind of put all of your hopes and dreams, onto this little picture the size, this thing the size of a quarter. And I've got a lapel pin here of our logo. But in preparation for that, Shannon Prather of the Star and Tribune came over, and she wrote 2 articles actually. One before the logo came out, and then one after our logo unveiling. And it did come up in the conversation. She said, I understand, your husband is also involved in this work, and he built, his company built US Bank Stadium, and I was a little bit nervous about how that might play out in her writing, but on the way out the door, she talked with our communications guy and said, she's like, I love it. He builds it, she fills it. That was kind of fun. So, for many years I was kind of on my own in terms of being first a quarter time, then a half-time employee for the Minneapolis local organizing committee, and now last January, a year ago, we opened the office and we're starting to hire our team. So it's great to have a team, but it's also nice to be on your own. And I have a presentation, boilerplate, and then I tend to kind of wander off and share kind of the thoughts and things that are on my heart. But now with my communications lead, asking me like, well, what are you going to talk about at breakfast with Blake? I said, I don't know. Let's see what comes out. It's a friendly audience. So I've got a clicker here, but let's see. So, the timing for this presentation is perfect, right? Because this is what's on everybody's mind right now. No, but, just experiencing this surge of excitement really gives, me, and I think all of us, a sense for what the power of sports is, right, in people's lives, and how it can make you feel, how sports can make you feel, even if you aren't on the team or on the field, because I feel that all of us, whether we love or don't care about football, are feeling a surge of pride right now. And so, while it's not our moment, we're not on the precipice of our moment's coming, and so it's a great time to reflect and look forward. Minneapolis Final Four in 2019, one of the questions that I get asked most frequently by just sort of acquaintances is, how's it going with that Super Bowl thing you're doing? And, I'm like, no, that's Maureen Bausch, that's a different event. And I said that for a long time. But now when people say, how's it going with the Super Bowl? I just say, it's going great. I appreciate that confusion. But April 6 and 8 of 2019, we're going to have over 130,000 people come from outside of the region, from over an hour away, 70,000 of them through the airport. Another 70,000 of them will drive into this community in order to experience a Final Four. So what I'm thinking is I'll share a little bit about kind of, facts at a glance. Here's what a Final Four is in all of its pieces, because we haven't had this in 18 years. And our community is an entirely different community. And the event is an entirely different event. It's still 3 basketball games, but there's so much built around it now. And so I'd love to share about that, and then share about how are we thinking about this opportunity? How are we going to leverage and utilize this opportunity for the impact that we want to see here? And then time for questions. So think about your questions and think about the hard ones, because I'll get them sooner or later from somebody, and I'd rather have them here. This really feels more like conferring than presenting for me. So that's a picture of our team. By the time we host our event, we will have been to 4 Final Fours. So Indy, Houston, Phoenix, and we're taking about 25 on our extended team, including public safety and facilities folks, convention center folks, university folks, with us to San Antonio for this Final Four. So by the time it's our turn, we're at the far end of the 2017, 18, 19, 2020 round that was awarded back in 2014. So we'll have had a good chance to visit. But the core events, what the NCAA calls the tentpole events, are a coaches convention of over 5,000 National Association of Basketball coaches who come into town the Tuesday before Final Four weekend, and they have their convention. So you'll start to see earlier in the week, like, everybody is tall and looks really healthy, and downtown starts to kind of transform into a very fit environment downtown. But the first public event is an open stadium event. And remember that when US Bank Stadium opened a couple of years ago, more than 100,000 people came through the door just to walk around and see it. And so we're really excited to be able to provide another chance to just come in the door and see this environment where 24 hours later there are going to be these 2 semifinal games. And the stadium is really transformed. The decor and the wrap and the experience. And there's also an all-star game. And there are a number of events. There's band and cheer practice. You can buy merchandise, walk around, sit in a seat that will be an expensive ticket the very next day. And we do hope that we'll get about 20,000 people or many more. We have 150,000 people who work downtown. So we'd love to invite those folks to knock off early on that Friday and come over to the open stadium. There's a fan festival which takes place in the convention center. That is, it's a lowest price ticket. It's really a family-friendly event where for the price of, say, going to a movie, you could spend, half a day or more downtown and experience different, autograph signings, things that are a bit basketball and non-basketball in terms of activities, and there's food and beverage, things to do. We'll be aiming for 50,000 or so people on the Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday of the Fan Festival. This is a fun one. Sunday morning Sunday's the down day of a Final Four weekend with the semifinal game Saturday and the champ game on Monday, and early in the morning on Sunday there is this event called the Dribble. It's a basketball parade. So over 3,000 youth and their families would be dribbling basketballs down a couple of blocks down Nicollet Mall, for example, and then have free access into the Fan Festival. And it is a hoot and hysterical. And if you go, put an Excedrin in your pocket because it can be quite loud. And you'll have a band, maybe a puppet parade or something at the head of that. And this is really emblematic of, how, this event, it's about youth. And so there are lots of ways that we'll be engaging young people from very young, and all the way up through our events. And so the Dribble gets over 3,000. It's free by pre-registration. The last time we hosted a Final Four in 2001, this part of the event, and the events around the games are called ancillary events. This ancillary event didn't exist. And it is huge. I cannot say enough about the March Madness Music Festival. It is historically, traditionally, a giant outdoor festival that has 6 or more hours of programming leading up to Rihanna one night, Zac Brown Band one night, for example, Maroon 5 one night. And so it's fully sponsored by the NCAA's lead sponsors, which are Coke, Capital One, and AT&T. So they bring in incredible talent. What I love about it is that you don't even need a ticket. You just show up, clear security, and you go in and enjoy that 6 hours of programming. Now, what will this look like here in Minneapolis? And in these times where concerns about security and other things are different, we're not 100% sure, but it has been a really spectacularly popular. It's had over 165,000 people, 150,000 people inflow and outflow on Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. And just make a note that Friday night tends to be the night that people haven't quite caught wind yet, like, for real, a free concert with talent like Bruce Springsteen. So Friday night is a night that people are more likely to get in before it reaches capacity. So. Oh yeah, the games. So the games are still the games. I mean, really at the center of Final Four is the student athlete experience. So you wander too far from providing integrity around the tournament, beginning with the selection, with the bracket, with the advancement of the teams, with the experience that the student athletes have, the experience that their families have who've supported them for so many years to get to that moment, that one shining moment. It's spectacular. I have a 21-year-old son, and he's pretty amazing. But you think about, the pressure of that environment and, what that would be like to be, for example, at Tyus Jones a couple of years ago in Indianapolis. And so it's the events are really, and the planning is really, yes, there's commercial activity around it, but the student athlete experience is really at the heart of what the NCAA is looking to provide. A little bit of Final Four by the numbers. The viewership of the games, countries in the world where this event is broadcast. There's only about 200 countries in the world, and this event is broadcast in 176 of them. Visitors to Minneapolis and attendance across all events. It's a big deal. It's a national and global big deal. For the NCAA, it's a giant fundraiser for 450,000 student athletes who, and we know here at Blake, because we really invest and prioritize the experience that our students are having inside and outside the classroom, and the development that they're doing of different aspects of themselves. And so it's amateur, it's collegiate sports, but it's a big deal in terms of what the reach is and the attention that will come to our community, and the opportunity that we have when the attention is on us to tell the world something about ourselves, to update how people think about Minnesota and what is now the North, and our city and our region. So MLOC stands for Minneapolis Local Organizing Committee, which is the parlance that the NCAA gives us, and it makes for a really long business card. And I wish it would be easier if it was the host committee, but MLOC is what we call ourselves for short. And so here's the thing. You do a Final Four. There's a huge economic benefit that comes from a Final Four, and other cities report it in a range from $80 to $250 million, and the bigger numbers tend to be in Texas, where everything's bigger, and we would maybe plant our flag on the more conservative end of what the economic benefit is in terms of people coming in and the spending that happens in this community, in this region. It's a great reason to do the event. But I would submit not the only reason, and maybe not even the most important reason, but it certainly is a significant driver. But number one, you want to deliver all of these events with excellence. You have to. It's table stakes for anything else that you would want to do, so certainly that is our number one goal. Number two, you might not realize there are only about 10 venues in the country where you can host a Final Four. 10 cities can do it, and some join that rank, others fall away, and what it has to do is having that domed stadium. You have to have a domed stadium for a lot of different reasons, having to do with the broadcast aspect of the event and the controlled environment that you need for the event, and the event doesn't happen in arenas anymore. So there are about 10 of those. And then only about 5 of those have the footprint that everybody wants in terms of the experience, which is that venue, that dome stadium, is right downtown. So that you come into the airport, get on light rail, come downtown, bring your sneakers. You don't need anything else. You can walk to and from all of the different experiences around the event. So we see that we have a future opportunity. If we deliver number one, we should be able to get at number 2 every 7 to 9 years and be a great partner. The NCAA has a wonderful relationship with the University of Minnesota. And so the role of the host institution in this should not be lost on any of us. The fact that the University of Minnesota delivers championship events with excellence consistently, and not necessarily the marquee ones, but they're there as a great partner, really gives the NCAA a high degree of confidence that a Final Four will go well here. So we want to get into, you compete every time, but we'd love to get into a relationship with the NCAA and be a partner for future Final Fours. And then, if you do 1 and 2, then you really have the opportunity to vision what kind of impact that you want to see by hosting these events in your community. And I think a lot of you know about me. I don't come from sports, and I'm not from travel and tourism, which is unusual. And my peers and counterparts in other cities, and we're very collegial, and we all want to see each other do well, because I can't do Phoenix's best Final Four, and New Orleans can't do Minneapolis's best Final Four. It's a hugely supportive environment, but they tend to be athletic department folks, travel and tourism, meeting and event planning folks. This is maybe a third way, which is, how do you design an event with excellence for the impact that you want to see in your community? And this is what really grabs at my heart, what I'm very excited about, is how do we make sure that in this new space where we've made these infrastructure investments, US Bank Stadium, light rail, the airport, that have gotten the notice of the entire country around, well, where should we put our X Games? And, and then that Super Bowl and those future Final Fours and NCAA wrestling events. I mean, the table is set. And if it is, what do we want that to look like? What do we want to see from it beyond and outside of fill-in-the-blank sport or event or opportunity? And so with Final Four, having had the chance to think since 2014 about how do we design an event around the impact that we want to see, we've been able to crystallize some programs and plans that when we're at the other side of it, we'll be able to look back and say, well, with a lot of intentionality, here's what that got us. And so our impact areas are around youth and education. Makes a lot of sense. These are student athletes, and it's very much kind of on brand for the NCAA to be focused on youth, to be focused on education. And how we think about that here is that we want to see our youth really at the center of these events. And we have a theory that if we go hyper-local with our marketing, with our plans and programs 10 months out from the event, that media and other places, they'll follow us into Cedar Riverside. They'll come with us to the north side of Minneapolis. They'll visit East Phillips and every neighborhood of the city where we can elevate, hey, kids play basketball here too, and let us show and share a few other things about these communities. So the youth at the centerpiece is really important to us. Certainly education as well. And I would love to reveal all of the things that we are going to do, but one of the things that I'm learning is that you have to wait. Timing is important for when these things come forward. But our education thrust is going to be our legacy piece, where we plant our legacy flag, and what you will see is something that will touch young people entirely around the state of Minnesota, and we're very excited for how we can all engage together around those education priorities. And then also diversity and inclusion. Making sure I tell you everything about youth. We'll focus with our youth activities on health, wellness, and achievement. Certainly the achievement piece is the education program that we're excited to be sharing with you perhaps later this spring. And then we also have a paid internship program. It's called Future Stars, and we did some kind of separate fundraising for that, and it's in its own special category. And what that is an opportunity to identify high potential high school, college, and early stage career individuals who are underrepresented in the planning end of sports. When you think about who's playing basketball, it's about 75% people of color on the court. One of the things that we're really aiming to do is to help grow the capacity and create opportunity for individuals who are underrepresented on that planning and executive and administration side of sports. And then over on the diversity and inclusion area, an interesting thing about the financial model, because we do raise millions of dollars. We're still raising money for Final Four. We'll get to a certain goal and we'll make it work for that amount, because we don't want to be the most expensive Final Four in the entire country. That would not make us proud. So. But we do have to raise a lot of money, and that money comes from the business community. So our large employers of this region step up, and they step up, and they step up. And in this case, they don't get brand activation. It's not available to them. The NCAA is a different structure. So we're not able to say, company X, and here's this event brought to you by, we don't do that. But our large employers care about our youth and the education that we're providing for our youth and their wellness. They're our future workforce, and we care about them even just as young people. They also care about our diversity and inclusion space, and how are we telling the story of that future face of Minnesota? How are we updating and refreshing people's sense of, Minnesota equals what is that little bubble picture that you have in your mind? Because if you spend time downtown like I do, we are a sophisticated global city. I mean, the talent is amazing, the diversity is amazing, the energy is incredible. And so how do we use all of our channels, our website, our Facebook, to authentically share that incredible diversity that we have and the asset that it is and continues to be as it grows. So our diversity and inclusion thrust is around how do we utilize our hiring, our contracting, our committee leadership, our membership, our volunteer corps as wonderful opportunities to really emphasize by being proactively inclusive of all people, including everybody in this room, to really show and share the heart of Minneapolis with the larger world. And then our grassroots marketing plans, where we will be in community with our fun activities, with our invitation, so people authentically feel like, oh no, I'm supposed to go to that. That's meant for me and for my family and for our kids. So that is something that we're thinking about as well. So when it comes to some of those diversity and inclusion goals, I don't necessarily have the network to get there when it comes to matching up these opportunities with the top talent that we need to deliver all these events with excellence. But one of the things that we did a year and a half ago, before we had an office, before we had any hired team, is that we put together an impact advisory Council. And they're really the cornerstone committee for the Minneapolis Final Four, which is going to really help us, share the heart of Minneapolis with the larger world as we deliver all these events with excellence. And so that committee, that council, is made up of 25 or so top professionals, all different sectors, women and men, different ages, all diverse and diverse within that group. And what they've agreed to be for me is a network of different networks. I've got a network, you do, everybody does. Our networks have high-performing people in them. And so in order to really access that top talent, they have been a go-to for me, and helping to make sure that as we design our events, that, I'm not missing my blind spots. You don't want to do a major event on Ramadan, if you want to be inclusive of your Muslim community, things like that. And so the Impact Advisory Council is, has been for me kind of the wind beneath my wings, if you will, sort of a secret sauce of putting together a high-performing team, none of whom I knew before, which is a little bit of, this kind of different way, because I don't come with like the people who did it last time. There's maybe an open orientation, which I would just, might be something I suggest for everybody in the room when you think about how you're spending your time and who you're spending it with and where you're looking for talent and people is, give yourself permission to, try something new and reach out to someone you don't know yet, someone who's a few people removed from you, but whom you know by reputation. And so that Impact Advisory Council has been really a key to our planning. And so concentric circles here, right here, 4 days of Final Four, rocking it, making ourselves proud, having people come and have that experience that makes them want to come back to Minnesota as soon as possible and have that experience again. Just outside of that is, how do we think about these events that we have across, we've had All-Star Game in 14, Ryder Cup, Senior Games, X Games, Super Bowl, Final Four. Shouldn't stop. It shouldn't stop there. What's next in 2 years? What's 3 years after that? We should be thinking big, because again, we have, and I confirm this from 5 years of traveling around to other regions, we have what it takes. We have what it takes in our venues. We have what it takes in our position geographically, and we really have what it takes in our community. So thinking about that in a very proactive and strategic way so that we could turn things like our anti-human trafficking standards, we could take our commitment to legacy projects around large events like Super Bowl and Final Four, we could take our small business inclusion, our diversity inclusion strategies, and we could turn them into a competitive advantage so that events that are already out there and ones we might dream up really become, for every member of our region and of our state, something to feel engaged with, proud of, a participant in. So that's the orientation that we have around Final Four and how we're part of something bigger. And we really I look forward to having your questions now. And as I said at the beginning, ask hard ones, because someone's going to ask them eventually. And for me, this is, great practice. So thank you for your attention. I know some folks have to scoot off to work, but thank you for listening.
I'm sure someone's got a question out there for Kate. John Crosby, right here. Hang on, John. We've got a microphone.
Kate, this is going beyond the Final Four. Have you thought about hosting the Olympics? We almost did in '96. Could we do it?
In terms of what you need for infrastructure, I'm not sure we check all those boxes. But we pursued a World Expo opportunity and narrowly missed that. I would say, if you even just think about US Bank Stadium, that iconic venue, having a domed stadium, it's a really big deal because climate is a global disruptor for these major sports events. Even Austin, which has South by Southwest, they had just a little bit of icy rain and everything just ground to a halt. And so when you think about those separating aspects that at the time you're like, I don't know, do we need that? Is that necessary? For thinking really big, which I think we should do, these investments that we've made at that really global level of standard, I think really opens up amazing opportunities.
Hey, this is not a hard question. You had mentioned the Youth and Education Initiative, and that now's not the time to unveil what's going to happen. But when might we hear about what's coming?
Later this spring. Yep, later this spring. There are kind of traditional ways and plans and programs that host committees, put their programs and ways to benefit their local community out, and we want to spend as much time as we can in those activities. And so really for us, after the confetti drops in San Antonio, spotlight's on us here, we can start to kind of gate and pace out and announce into community, but they're already in the planning stages where by the time that we do, some of those key partners will have already been, starting those activities. So.
Thanks so much. I love the frame of viewing this as an opportunity to tell the world something new about Minnesota. And I'm wondering, with respect to the music events that you have plans, are you thinking about incorporating some of our vibrant local music scene and artists into that? And I'm thinking, I guess in particular, about like Lizzo or Fabielle from the Rondo and some of those people who are really coming up. I would love to see that.
Short answer is yes. The partners to the NCAA, Turner and CBS, have the broadcast rights to Final Four out to 2032. It's a very long-term deal, and part of that is that they put together some of the programming, but certainly they want to land it well in every community and help to kind of lift and elevate and engage, and Super Bowl's done a great job of kind of establishing that local sense of our folks on the stage, and we do have so much talent here locally, so that I do expect with the March Madness Music Festival, which again is 6 hours of free programming over 3 days, and leading up to that national stature act. So there's a lot of opportunity to have local music. Mm-hmm.
Will those concerts be in the stadium?
They will definitely not be in the stadium. Definitely not. And but we would like those concerts to be as close to right in downtown, again, because that's one of our key value propositions, is that easy to get to, easy to get around, compact experience, but that site hasn't been identified yet. And our role in that is we provide viable options, and then our NCAA partners choose based on the viable options.
So my question is kind of simple, but how do you do it all with such a big project, with such a big scope? How do you create short-term deliverables? Because you've been working on, like you said, you've been traveling for 5 years, while feeling like you're checking those boxes, but you're still keeping the impact on the youth and the diversity and inclusion in mind as well. Like, how do you manage the long-term effects with the short-term deliverables?
Mm-hmm. So I do, this is how I operate. I do think first about what do I want it to look like at the end, and then back up all of those activities to the things that are in the nearer term. For example, on the diversity and inclusion piece, our Impact Advisory Council. I want to have that long-term result of people feeling like, yeah, that was about me too, and I got to play a role. And this was, what it would take is people who weren't already in my network helping me achieve that goal. So establish that Impact Advisory Council, learn from them constantly. That would be an example. And what that looks like now, and we're 14 months out from the event, but what that looks like now is that our hired team is 60% diverse. I mean, people of color, also 60% diverse in gender, women. And then our contracting and service provider, our rate of kind of selecting a woman or minority-owned business enterprise, LGBT, veteran-owned, et cetera, is at 70%. When you take away Comcast business or where there aren't choices. So and I've learned that that's a fair thing to do, because sometimes you don't have a choice. But we're not just talking about catering for this event, which is a cool way to engage small businesses. We're talking about our bookkeeper and accountant, our HR consultant, our IT professional. So to answer your question, you've got that long-term goal in mind. You really have to back up to where you are at the starting line and really have everything you do hew to that. And then I would say, hire great people. If that is the mark of a strong leader, I'm a strong leader, because I've hired some really great people who are so good at what they do. And to work on our team, you have to be passionate about the event. Basketball, this event, for sure. But not only that, you have to really care about the city, the region, and the state. But not only that, you really have to care about the impact goals. And I think for the people on our team, and it's really hard work, it's nights and weekends, and it's like we're all, checking our phones kind of all the time. But I think when you are really good at what you do, and you get to do it in a space that is about things that are also on your heart, I think that's like launch pad for excellence.
This is really easy. Are you going to do a zip line across the river? And if you are, how do we get tickets?
It's sold out. Can you believe it? Rats, before I could sign up, it's sold out. I don't know if that's really my thing, the zip line across the river, but some of those wow factor aspects of Super Bowl are like, dang, they are good up on the 11th floor. We work in the same office tower, and people ask sometimes, like, do you get together with Super Bowl? And yeah, we do. We talk frequently. We coordinate so that we're not in the public space at the same time doing things, and they've been very generous in terms of mentoring us. We've seen how their plans and programs come forward and think about, okay, what is sort of our version of that meets the expectation that the community will have, even while culturally they're very different. And so a lot of great coordination there. But some of their things like Zipline and the Verizon Upstage and Super Bowl Live, like, I'm a volunteer in Crew 52. I have got my kit and my 4 shifts that I'll be working in order to kind of experience all of those wonderful activities.
Okay, there was an article in the Strip about 2 weeks ago talking about the lack of adequate sports facilities in our inner city schools. Ken talked about facilities, coaches, uniforms, that they just don't have that stuff in the inner city that we've got out here. Is there a way for an event like the Final Four to raise the profile of the need for us to do a better job on sports facilities for these inner city schools?
Peter, what I would say about that is that we are a hotbed for basketball. I mean, like, at every level. It is amazing the talent that is percolating up in our different programs, all the way up to kind of D1 play and our pro teams, male and female basketball teams. This is a really exciting time to be about basketball in this community. And I would say that the very specific plans we have to be in every ward of the city, and I'll back up a little bit and say, you can't have a Final Four if people aren't all in, including government. I mean, you can't say, like, good luck with that. No, you really need people who are going to be there with you for the challenges and the opportunities. And so as we work with and talk with our elected officials in the city, the first thing we say is, how can we be in your part of the city? And we're literally building an event calendar around making sure that on Open Streets Day, that we're in East Phillips, and because theirs is particularly vibrant, that this is the event to be in, Powderhorn area or North Side Flow, or and as I mentioned earlier, our goal is to take kind of that sizzle and put that light on that community and tell the stories of what's there and maybe what's needed, and kind of see what maybe would flow from that in the ways that we can really feel engaged and take ownership for our entire community.
First of all, thank you. This was very informative. The other is, you've got social and economic success in this, wrapped into this. The economic was easy to measure. How do you know it's working in the social goals you've set?
Well, so I'll go back to the Impact Advisory. I want to shout out that one of our Impact Advisory Council members happens to be here. Ro Adabi, will you raise your hand? Thank you for coming. He found his way here because one of his friends has a Blake parent. So, we meet quarterly on a Saturday. So these people are, again, top of their field, and they're giving their time, and long before anybody, was paying much attention. So I work it out and practice it there and learn there and learn about things like how best to measure your diverse business inclusion, how best to, so some of it we are still working on, but our intention is at the end, when we say we want to set a new high bar and maybe establish a standard or best practice on this that becomes a selling proposition for future events, we have to be able to talk about that in a quantitative way. And so our commitment is, when we're all wrapped up, to find the right opportunity to do a report out on those things. So we are measuring all along as we go. I mentioned where we are right now in terms of our percentage of contracts awarded in the women and minority-owned business enterprise community. So we're tracking that all along. And so when you say, how do you know you did it or not, some of it will be quantitative and some of it will be qualitative. How did we feel? What are the stories? What is that sense of pride that we collectively take in feeling like the things that our community has to offer are really being kind of brought to the fore. So it's a mix of both.
Kate, question for you. What change have you gone through in the last few years on this and surprised you came into this with this notion and all of a sudden you realized, wow, here's an opportunity. I mean, in my mind, I'm thinking this is a great economic opportunity, and now I hear about the educational opportunities. Now, what has surprised you the most through this process in terms of what you kind of thought you were going to do and now what you see you can do?
Mm-hmm. I would say that the opportunity has expanded. So initially, I can't, and I think organizing a Final Four, it's big enough. There's a lot that goes into that. And what has been interesting in my growth is I probably 5 years ago would not have said, start my own business. I probably would not have. I would have thought whoa, that seems like a lot to do. But in order to do a Final Four, we had to open a business. We had to open an office. We had to hire people. We had to put, our policies and financial practices in place. We had to go out and, raise funds and find buy-in. So, and then, attending to the events of the Final Four is a thing, but seeing these bigger opportunities. So what happens is I keep seeing an even a bigger opportunity, which now has grown to become just, how can I support the healthy development of this sector? How can we help to inform that the build out of an economy around not just sports, but other events? Because, a giant music event gets cited in some of the same venues, right? I mean, our compact footprint downtown, it lends itself to making Northern Spark a global festival that happens here every year that could rival a South by Southwest. So just seeing wow, the potential of this is big. How do we fully realize that potential, but do it in a way that whether or not you care about the teams or the venues or the sports or that particular, that you feel like this is an activity I'm glad that we're undertaking. That we can that we can say, well, I'm all about this thing over here, but yeah, I like how they're doing that. They're conducting that activity, development of this economy around sports and events in a way that I feel good about. So that's been the growth for me.
Awesome. Kate, thank you very much. This is great.